Hi, I'm Nisha DeGaring, host of Good Things Utah, and I've been a longtime supporter of Todd's Belief Cast. I hope you find inspiration in the courageous stories shared by the amazing people Todd features on his show. The guests serve as shoulders for us to stand on, allowing us to see a little further and cultivate belief in oneself. Remember, you have the dignity and power to change. I encourage you to keep striving and believing in yourself. Enjoy today's podcast.
I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to the incredible sponsors of the Belief Cast podcast. First, Craig from Craig Swapp and Associates. If you need an attorney, he's your guy. Trustworthy, compassionate, always there when you need him most. Next, Wasatch Recovery, the greatest university on the planet, transforming lives one day at a time. Sandy from Minky Couture, the creative genius behind the most comfortable blanket you'll ever wrap yourself in. Comfort like no other. The visionaries behind Thread wallets. These wallets redefine style and functionality. Dave Philippi from Micro Plus, pushing the boundaries of nanotechnology and scientific research to bring us cutting-edge supplements for optimal health. The Ralphs and the Debenhams, creators of Mori Nutrition and Calm. Because if you're struggling with sleep, feeling stressed, or can't focus, Calm is your answer. Special thanks to the award-winning pianist Paul Cardall for his beautiful music that brings inspiration to every episode. And finally, Gab Wireless, letting kids be kids and giving parents the peace of mind they deserve. Right now, Gab is offering $25 off any device to new customers with no contract required. That's $25 off any Gab smartphone or smartwatch. Just go to gab.com/belief. That's where you'll get the best deal. That's Gab, GABB.com/belief. Thank you to all these amazing sponsors for supporting the Belief Cast podcast and empowering us to continue spreading positivity and inspiration to the world. Welcome back. This is Todd Sylvester, your host of the Belief Cast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in week after week. I love you guys. The support is fantastic. Again, a shout out to my sponsors that you just listened to. I appreciate all their belief and support of me as well. Without them, I wouldn't be able to be where I'm at today. So thank you for supporting this. And as always, these amazing people that I bring on, week after week, it's so cool to get to know people's story. And today's going to be no different. Today we are joined by CHRISTOPH Merrill. CHRISTOPH, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Todd. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, CHRISTOPH was a referral. We connected, and I'm grateful that we have. CHRISTOPH has been through a lot in his life. He is the president CEO of HabitFreak.
I am.
That's what we're going to call it.
That's what we're going to call it.
And we're going to get into what that is. And CHRISTOPH has had his struggles, and because of the struggles, though, is it fair to say that because of that, you have had to dig deeper, which has allowed you to be way more successful had you not had those challenges?
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
And we're going to get into all that, and there's a lot to talk about here. I don't even know how to say this. I guess I might just read this exactly like it says.
Okay.
In today's world, establishing life-changing habits that persist through chaos can feel nearly impossible, especially if you're juggling high-stakes responsibilities, personal challenges, and unprecedented mental health dynamics. You know this firsthand.
I do.
Right? As someone yourself who's lived with Bipolar Type 1, you built a $50 million revenue company in under 3 years and trained over 100,000 people as a global leadership and performance coach. That is amazing. First of all, to be able to...
It makes me sound way better than it is,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I get that.
You don't... Again, the success happens incrementally.
Yeah.
You don't realize, as it's adding up. Like if I were to turn the question, right, and say, how many people have come through, right? Mm-hmm. Like that you have, right?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden that number is really, really large.
Yeah.
But you're really focused on the individual. You're kind of focused on either the one or that particular group that you happen to be, speaking to. So while that makes me sound, really, really awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a growth process for sure.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that because I totally agree. It's like, 1% better every day. Just try to be a little better today than we were yesterday.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into all this. And I'm excited because our listeners are going to really learn a lot from you today and also be inspired. why don't we start with, tell us, Christoph, where you were born, what was your childhood like, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Awesome. So I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1976. You can date me. I'm totally fine. The funny thing is, so I was adopted at birth. So my biological mother was 14 when she conceived me.
Oh, man.
15 when she gave birth. She was unaware that she was having a child.
Really?
She, again, without disclosing too much information or being too,
Sure.
Again, being very considerate.
Yeah.
She'll readily admit that she did a lot of drugs, that she had an active kind of, experimentation type of social life. Obviously that led to me.
Yeah.
The biological father, which that word is a really hard word to swallow. I know that kind of opens up a whole bunch of doors, but he really was more of a donor.
Oh, right.
Right. Like father. Yep. Oh gosh, there's a weight to that word. So
Yes.
I've had a hard time, and he's going to hear this, and he knows, and we've come in contact after.
Oh, really?
I think it took 46 years for me to find them. Like, that's a whole nother story. So long story short, he was 19, and she gave birth at the hospital. And essentially decided, I do not want this baby, which again, as an adopted kid, is one of those kind of things. I know you talk a lot about kind of like self-worth,
Yes.
and value and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Adopted kids, because of the hard part about it is there's kind of like an inherent trigger of you weren't wanted.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, now being a dad many, many years later, having a 12-year-old, having a 17-year-old, having had a 15-year-old, right?
Sure.
Oh my gosh. Like there would be no way to prepare her emotionally, mentally, physically, all of those kinds of things to be able to handle or facilitate a child at that age.
Right.
I give major props to those, I'm going to call them children, who do decide to keep their child. Either way is a very difficult and hard decision either way, right?
Either way, yep. Totally.
Luckily, I was given up for adoption. I was the only known case in the state of Utah that was actually not done through an adoption agency in the year 1976.
Oh, really?
So, like, it got pretty tricky. Long story short, after I got married, we had kids, and I was trying to find out more. Really couldn't find anything because I was the only known case, and my case had been sealed. So, like, there was no, I could only go so far.
Yeah.
So I was adopted by two wonderful people who could not have kids of their own, really wanted children of their own, but struggled. And they struggled for 7+ years to have kids, and then realized it's just not going to happen for us. So then they put themselves kind of on the adoption, registry per se. And the interesting thing is, because they were now older, they're 7 years older than the young couple, they typically were bypassed. They'd have the new mom looking at it going like, gosh, like, why are they so old, or what's wrong? So, years went by, and then one day the phone rings, and as my mother, mentioned, she was just like, I literally like wanted to just start jumping for joy. They said, hey, we have a newborn baby. He was born yesterday. The mother isn't in a position to take him. Do you want him? Now, my dad at the time was serving in the National Guard, so he was gone, and was this was pre-cell phone. Like, this was 1976, right? Like, there was no text message, hey, Dave, we've got a boy for you.
Yeah.
It was essentially about a week.
Yeah, it takes a while to track someone down.
Well, and especially, when he was the kind of like in his 2-week period of National Guard, he was unavailable.
Right.
And so my mom made the decision, we want the baby. And so then she kind of made, arrangements and all that kind of stuff. To go further into my childhood, I was absolutely spoiled rotten. There was not a thing I did not, all of my needs were taken care of.
Right.
Completely. 100%, everything. If I happened to need an extra backpack, I got an extra backpack. Like, they were absolutely fantastic. Simply because of how long they had wanted a child.
Yeah.
And so then to finally
they were
have
over the
one,
top,
oh
yeah.
my gosh, like
Yeah.
they were, they were ecstatic. I was born very premature, so I think about 32 weeks.
Okay.
So I had to stay kind of in the, I don't know, at the NICU, I guess it would be what it would be
NICU,
called.
Yeah, right.
And so eventually they got to come and get me, take me home, kind of the whole gamut. I do have a sister. She's adopted as well. And gosh, there wasn't a thing I didn't ever want, because everything was provided, right? Like, I mean, they took care of everything. My dad was probably the best provider you could have ever imagined. Like he knew what his role was. He knew what his job was. He did everything he could in his power.
Sure.
Again, not exorbitant wealth. We when we grew up, I grew up in West Valley, Utah.
Yeah.
So our house was maybe 1,200 square feet. But as a kid, you don't know.
You don't even know that.
You don't know that
I
some
know.
people's offices are 1,200 square feet.
It's funny you say that, because when I go back to my childhood home and just go look at it,
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I was really small. But as a kid, you're like, man, the thing was exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And it was big in your mind.
You
and
didn't know,
you didn't
right?
care.
Yeah, you didn't care. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember the shag green carpet.
Yeah.
Green.
Yeah.
Like vomit or,
totally.
something worse, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
that color of green, like that was my carpet, right?
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
I had Superman, wallpaper. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that most people do wallpaper anymore. Maybe it's making a comeback. The mullet is making a comeback.
The
if you've
mullet
seen
is,
high
so
school
maybe
kids.
some wallpaper too.
Wallpaper is probably on its way. And so,
Yeah.
from a worldly possession kind of a thing, you didn't really know any different, right?
Yeah.
But as a kid, we had a trampoline, we had the snowmobile. It was not it was probably a very, very, in 70, probably the 80s, 85, it was probably like a 1960s snowmobile, but my dad kept it running and we could go up and down the street when it snowed.
Yeah.
And wonderful, just absolutely wonderful memories. Of just kind of growing up and being a kid, right? I remember my dad was very hands-on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He ended up being a full bird colonel in the Army, in the National Guard.
Dang.
I believe it was probably about 13 or 14 where he requested that I call him sir. That dad was kind of not on the table anymore. I would prefer you to refer me to as sir.
Okay. Now, real quick, before this, did you at this time, like how old were you when you found out you were adopted?
As early as I could. It was never a secret.
So it was open from the time you could understand. They were telling you. Okay.
So my father worked a lot. Like we had wonderful quality time with him.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a lot of quantity.
Okay.
So I don't remember him ever kind of speaking about it in a negative fashion.
Sure.
But from the earliest memory I can remember, my mother would always, it was the way it was supposed to be.
Okay.
We couldn't have kids.
Right.
You came through another way. I'm so grateful. And that's that's kind of like how we were able to have you.
Gotcha.
So very early,
okay.
It's a catch-22, right?
Yeah.
Because I know there's kind of open or closed or whatever. I knew that I was different, like from a very, very kind of early, like, oh, I'm not your kid, which is a horrible kind of like introduction into the teenage years.
For sure.
We are already, and I'm saying we as the population of like the world are already tough enough on our parents or tough enough on ourselves to throw that piece in there.
Right.
I mean, gosh, the worst thing I ever said to my mom was, you'd never treat me this way if I was one of your real kids. Right?
Yeah,
like it still burns,
Sure.
like thinking how I somehow thought that would make it okay.
Yeah.
Right? You took away my gosh, I don't even remember what it was.
Well, it's
something
kind of
dumb.
like you were basically just kind of projecting your hurt onto her because that you were hurting.
Correct.
So
but you don't the
you
funny
don't
thing is,
understand that though.
Yeah, I've done a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of counseling, a lot of like EMDR, like a lot of processing, right, of like the elements of my life.
Yeah.
At that young age, though, you don't know how to process,
right?
Like
You don't.
you're still trying to figure out like components of like your own self-worth,
Yeah.
right? And your self-worth is somehow attached to your parents' pride or an advisor or a counselor or, a school teacher or a coach or something, right? Like their approval or, something that therefore validates who you are.
Okay.
And so removing kind of a component of like, I was adopted. I knew what it meant, but I didn't really,
Right.
because when I was born, the social worker that did it through the state of Utah, I have, I think, 2 sentences about my mother. That's it. That's all I got. 2 sentences. The father, I have 1 sentence. The crazy part is because she didn't really know him, it's not even true. Like it's totally not even correct.
Really?
So therefore, like,
Okay.
you're like, but you grow up with that and you kind of read that and you're like, okay, like, it's that old nature versus nurture kind of component where you think about it and you're like, okay, how much of it is nature? How much is nurture? Well, any of you have had kids. They come pre-programmed in a box, right? Like, ta-da! Like I have 4 kids.
Here they are.
and each of them are so unique, so different that like there's that element, but then there's also the element of like, I can see my wife in my son.
Yeah.
I can see elements of myself in my daughter, right?
For
So it's that overlap where it's a really unique kind of interesting thing. But as a teenager, I would say we are more equipped now, right? Like open communication about whether it's, I don't even need to go like therapy route, or if it's the open communication as to like processing emotions. Like back then it was suck it up, right? Like, hey, we don't cry, right? Like I need you to hold that together, right? Like that was a big deal. Like as a kid, when it's like, no, like I'm actually sad.
Yeah.
Like emotions are like very positive.
For sure.
So I think that kind of growing up in that environment of really kind of, I don't want to say suppressing my emotions, because boy, I'm like, I was called a freak very, very early in life, because like, like you're a freak of nature. Like I was a big time swimmer. And so like, I was fast, like wickedly fast. Like I know you played basketball, right?
Yeah,
and you practiced like a lot.
Yep, I did.
I was very blessed and talented and didn't have to practice at all. And I could have probably beat half of the state of Utah.
Wow.
Like not in a bragging way, but like just natural talent.
We're good at it.
I was just, I was insane. Right. So like, dude, Merrill, like, in high school back in the 90s, like you went by your last name.
Your last name.
You didn't
Merrill,
go by, Merrill, right?
Yep.
So like, Merrill, you're a freak. It's like a catch-22 connotation, right? Like where like, that's good, that's bad, that's whatever. It's basically how you interpret it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so growing up with that, right? Like it just kind of became kind of like who I was and what I was. And I didn't know that I was different. I didn't know that I was off.
Yeah.
It was just like, wow, like I have elements or motives where like I am on fire. Like I can get more done in like 24 hours than most people can get done in like a month. Right. Like where is that, right? Like what is going? And that just kind of continued like all through, kind of like a junior high school, kind of like, if I look back on it and I kind of see the cycle, right? Of like ups and downs of like bipolar. Had no idea at that time that there was.
You didn't even know what it was.
No, And we certainly back then didn't even talk about anything like that, right? Like
ever.
No.
Yeah.
So that was the gist of kind of like, growing up, great life, great memories. Probably my favorite one, besides all of the like, wonderful events with girls, is climbing the Murray smokestacks. If you remember,
yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like you've got to put a little bit of age on yourself to be able to remember those Murray smokestacks. But long story short, where IMC is, it's a big hospital ground now.
Yeah.
There were
right
2
there.
smelter, and one of them was 650 feet tall, and we put out our 94 flag on the top of it.
Wow.
And then got arrested.
Yeah, I remember those were like a landmark as you were driving down the freeway. Because I lived out here in Cottonwood Heights growing up.
Yeah.
When we were on the freeway, I knew we're about halfway home from Salt Lake as soon as we hit those smokestacks.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they were a landmark forever.
Yeah, it was awesome.
But
and sadly, now they're gone.
Now they're gone.
Yeah.
But you climbed that sucker.
Stupidly,
and
yes.
Put the flag up there.
Again, I'm going to say when you're young, there is a level of invincibility.
Yes.
Because you haven't tried, right? Like you haven't experimented enough to know where your limitations are, right? Especially kind of 16, 17, 18, right? Like I graduated when I was 17. I graduated very, very early.
Right.
So like thinking I'm like this, like, whoa, right? You don't realize how stupid some decisions are.
Yeah.
Like there were many spots along the rungs that you would climb up, 650 feet, where the bars were either missing or would twist, right? Yeah. Like the last probably 12 feet were inverted.
Yes,
because it came up and out. Dang. And so there was a metal, rusty, broken cage that would go up to the top, right?
Yes.
And then across you had an X, like that we would jump on, get up there and be like, let's see how, just right.
Yep.
But isn't that the wiles of youth? Like, aren't we testing, right?
For sure.
So the fact that no one ever died,
right,
at least in our group, right? Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. Wow, thank you for sharing. That's really eye-opening. And, I love your energy, and I think that's part of what makes you so good at what you do is you've got, is that fair to say? You got a high level, high energy. And maybe not all the time. I know that, but
I fluctuate. Again, I think I'm an empath, so I feel other people's emotions.
Okay.
I would say that makes me better at what I do. Like when you're on stage in front of a group, whether it's adults, whether it's teenagers, whoever it is, I feel like the human body is projecting a frequency, right? Yeah.
I agree.
Your emotional state is projecting something out into kind of like the ether, right?
Yeah.
Like you have a force field around you, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like for anybody that's married, your wife walks in or your husband walks in and they've had a terrible day, you can feel it.
Oh yeah, they don't have to say a
right?
word.
Yeah, they don't have to say a word.
Yeah.
And it isn't necessarily like the scowl. It isn't necessarily their facial expression. You're like, something's off.
Yep,
right?
You
Like
can just feel it.
Something's off. Yep. Okay. We're gonna be alert, right? We're gonna be attentive. We're gonna be, we're gonna acknowledge whatever it is. For me, whatever gifts I've been given, right? One of them is kind of being able to interpret that, like that frequency that is coming off of people, and just normally, naturally, kind of vibrating at a much higher rate than most people.
Yeah.
So therefore, it kind of like compounds, kind of like what I do,
right? Because
I typically don't do things that I'm not excited about. Like if you ask me to do the laundry, like fold the laundry, there's absolutely no way in the world. I would rather like go to the dentist. Yeah. Right? Like I would rather do something like that. Vacuum, right? Yeah. The manliest power tool in the house, right? Like the Roomba's cool, don't get me wrong, but like I want to use the, and give me a Dyson, like let it like really suck up the dirt so I could actually see that I did something, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a level of that where it's easier and whatever. So I have my boundaries, right? Yeah. Where things I want to do and things I don't want to do. But for the most part, if I'm doing something like something that I found that's for me that resonates, right? When I am doing something that makes me feel, I want to be really clear here on the wording.
Okay.
When I feel important now, right? Like I'll use the word family, right? Sure. Family is important. My mother, no matter how old I was, always made me feel, again, going back to the adopted component, like I was 7 years old. So I did not feel important around my mother until much, much later, until almost about the point when she passed away. So I didn't feel important, right? Okay. But when I feel important, right? Yeah. I vibrate on a very different level. So for me, my number one, like absolute number one, like kind of like motivator, right, is being free and independent. Okay. Like if you told me, hey, Christoph, I need you to sit at this desk and I need you to finish this report and I need you to do it in the next 10 minutes. oh, dude, I will like dig in my heels. There's no way I'm going to do it. But if you gave me the freedom and the autonomy, like, hey, I need you to do this and I need it to get done and I need it to get done, whatever. Oh, I'll do it and I'll do the best job you've ever seen, right? Yeah. Because I feel important because I'm not being like kind of controlled or micromanaged, right?
Yep. Resonates with more of who you really are.
So therefore, when I feel important, right? So again, family, I want to be very clear. Family is very important to me, right? Like it doesn't discount that, so
sure.
It's just that when I was around my mother, especially, I did not feel important. I felt small. I felt, I don't think she intentionally tried to do it. I think she just always saw me as this little teeny boy, no matter how large I got, right? As this little teeny boy that I adopted, that I saved him, that I, protect him, that whatever. And so therefore she did everything she could to take care of me in that way when, as a grown man, you're like, no. Like I want to kind of let me be, Mom, let me do my thing. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
well, and we were talking before we went live here today. You capitalize your first name and you lowercase your last.
I do.
Will you explain to our listeners why you do that?
So being adopted, and understanding that there are, understanding that because I was given a name, I have a responsibility to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
There are many unplanned pregnancies that those, whatever you want to call them, aren't given an opportunity to have a name. It's very close to me. It's very tender.
Yeah.
Especially in 1976. I can't thank my biological mother and my biological father and my adopted parents enough that therefore when, like, again, we all have names, right? And as I kind of decided, I think we all decide like who we are and who we want to be, right?
Yeah.
For me, you can call it a branding thing, you can call it whatever, but it goes back to that, like, kind of like the law of importance, right? Like, I am important. My name, having a name, being given a name is important.
It's important, yeah.
And therefore, by capitalizing it and lowercasing my last name, so it's all Christoph, CHRISTOPH, like, and sometimes exclamation point, right? It's a subtle reminder to me that you're here.
Mm-hmm.
You have a purpose. You have, like, there is more for you to do than just be a name on a sheet.
Yes.
Right? And for me, what I've tried to do, like with my businesses, with speaking, with all of that, right, is that's what I want to empower people to, like, believe in themselves.
I love
that. Like, Todd, like, do you realize there's not another Todd like you?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how many podcast episodes you've done? You've seen so many different people here, right? Like, like one in particular, Tiffany, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, you've had her on a couple of times, right?
Tiffany Peterson.
Yeah, Tiffany Peterson is just
a powerhouse.
Rock star, right?
Rock star.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so, like, and then how many people that has helped, right? Like you look at your stats and you look at your numbers and you're like, yeah, we've had this many downloads or whatever, right?
Right, sure.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
How many people have listened, again, one episode and changed something about their life because they listened to one that maybe they never listened to another episode.
Yeah.
But they go home and they treat their kids different. They go home and they treat their spouse different. They go home and they treat themselves different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like that's a level that you can't, like, even tally or comprehend or calculate, right?
Yeah.
That therefore, like, you are important.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Powerful. That means a lot, honestly. Well, there's so much to talk about here, but again, we said this at the beginning, you have this method called HabitFreak.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm understanding why maybe you added the freak to it.
The freak was the most important part.
Yeah. So why don't you explain to our listeners what is HabitFreak?
Okay.
Why'd you come up with the name?
Yep.
And then what does this do for someone, and
Totally.
what are you trying to do to change the world?
So, in 2011, I know just saying 2011 dates me, right? Like, 2011, right? Isn't this so funny?
I know. Seems like yesterday, but it's a
we're,
long time ago.
dude, we're getting close to 2030. Like, it's freaking me out.
I know, right?
Like, I remember the big old, 2000 panic. Like,
Yeah.
it's freaking me out. We're getting to 2030. Like, I'm not that old. I don't feel that old. Come on.
I know.
So, I started publicly speaking back in 2011. I owned an IRA company. We lived in Las Vegas at the time. I'd partnered with a really good friend of mine, and we needed to get in front of people, right? Like, we needed to offer IRAs, like self-directed IRAs.
Yeah.
We needed to get in front of people. I had a slew. I think I had 17 sales guys. None of them wanted, like, we had inked this contract with a seminar company. They were called Peak Potentials, T. Harv Eker's seminar company out of Canada.
Yeah.
And we were going to go, and we were given like 15 minutes the first time. Like, I mean, it was nothing, right?
Right.
Because they wanted to test us. They wanted to
Sure.
see. All we were doing was giving away a free gift. None of my sales guys wanted to do it. I'm like, you get all the leads. If you go and you do this, like, all of these leads are yours.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do it.
Wow.
Because there was going to be almost 1,000 people in the room. So I'm struggling with my wife, and I'm like, just, sharing, I'm venting. And she's like, you're an idiot. You are an idiot. It's you. You're the one that's supposed to speak. And up to that point, I had always been behind the scenes. Like, I had owned many companies. You would never know.
Right.
I had operated. You would never know. You couldn't find me. You couldn't paper me. No social media, all this stuff. And I'm like, really? Me? She's like, yeah. It's you. And I took the stage. It was in October 2011. And I remember my left foot hit the top of the stage. And for anybody who's ever spoken, it was like lightning went through my foot. Like, I felt plugged in to, like, my purpose and my plan. I felt plugged into heaven, right?
Sure, yeah.
That turned into basically 46 weekends that year. Wow. So over the next 12 months, I was gone 46 weekends in a row, like, doing these events, right?
Dang.
Not great on a relationship, on a marriage. Not the best thing.
Yeah.
Great for our business, right? Like, I mean, whoa. And then my partnership kind of separated. And I basically was like, all right, I'm going to go do something else. My partner went one way, I went the other. A couple weeks later, I got a phone call that said, hey, would you ever want to be, we know you're not doing the IRA thing anymore, but would you ever want to be one of our trainers? Now, this is T. Harv Eker. Like, this is like, for anybody that doesn't know who T. Harv Eker is, I'm going to say this. It's probably going to offend Harv. He's like the Tony Robbins of Canada.
Yeah, right.
Right? Harv, I apologize.
Yeah.
He's huge. He's big time, right?
Yep.
Created amazing seminars, and I'm like, I'd never even consider. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, so I decided to do it. They put me in the back of the room. I took out the trash. I ran handouts. Like, I learned the back of the room like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2015. I'm traveling around the world. I'm doing lots of events. Now, when we do events, it was 3 days. Me on stage for 3 full days,
Jeez.
12 hours a day, right?
Wow.
From an outside perspective, it looked like I had everything.
Yeah.
The money, the house on the hill, right? We lived in Vegas, gated, guard gated community, smoking hot wife, 4 mostly awesome kids. It depends on the day.
Some fame.
Yeah, right. A little bit. Well, when you're on stage, right? Like, there is that, like, elevation, right?
Yeah.
When I'm on stage, people are bringing me stuff. What do you need? How, where are you going? I'm again, not in an ego way, but, like, I would do $1 million or $2, $1 million or $2 million to $10 million a weekend, like, in sales. Like, we had back end, programs and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, you really, like, puff up your chest. I call it, like, puffing up like a peacock, right? Your tail goes out and you're like, yeah. And then you get home and your wife is like, can you take out the trash and, like, clean the pool? And you're like, what?
You're like, excuse me?
I don't know, right? So from an outside perspective, like, if you were looking at my Instagram from 2015, you'd be like, whoa. But something was off for me inside. So September 13th, 2015, I had kind of decided, like, hey, this is going to be a big day for me. So I got up early. I went in, and I typically did this before I left. I would go in and I'd say a little prayer, like, at my kid's bed, kind of, they were still asleep, but I'd say a prayer before I left. And then I'd, leave and travel and go wherever. This day, I wasn't going very far. I drove out to the lake, out to Lake Las Vegas, right as the sun was coming up. I mean, I still remember it like it was yesterday. Like, oh my gosh. And without a second thought, I took a 9mm pistol out of my bag, and I put it in my mouth. I want you to take a breath, because it's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Especially for anybody listening or watching this. I was not in a great place mentally, and I thought the easiest way to solve everyone's problems, including my own, was to remove myself from the equation completely. I can still taste, like literally, like right now, like I can taste it, the metal. I had created a habit back in 2011 when I started speaking that I did not intend to be amazing. I did not intend it to be heroic. I did not intend it to be grandiose. It was just write your kids a handwritten note before you leave, before you travel anywhere. Just write them each a little note. That's it. Sometimes they were short, sometimes they were long, but that way they always have something.
Yeah.
The second, and I do mean the second, before absolute chaos happened in everyone's life around me without me, the last thought ran through my head. Hey, you haven't written the note to your kids for the last time. And literally without even thinking about it, I took the pistol out of my mouth, set it on the seat next to me. I grabbed my notebook, and I started writing. Wow. Todd, I wrote horrible things to my kids. Like, I'm embarrassed still about the things I wrote to my kids. I had a son who was young at the time. Hey, kiddo, I'm going to need you to step up around the house because I quit. Like, let that sink for a second.
Yeah.
Or to my daughter, hey, Turtle, I'm not going to be around to walk you down the aisle. And it was kind of at that moment for me that I got to see, I don't want to call it a vision, I don't want to call it whatever. I got to see my kid's life kind of go on as if I did end my life, and how they would survive without me. Whoa. So I kind of, at that moment, like, it was like realize, like, wait a minute, where am I at? Like,
what am I doing here?
What exactly, right? Like, okay, let's stop back, call a friend, right? I want to emphasize this point. I called a friend who was basically in medical sales. So he sold like knees, hips, like the joints, right?
Yeah, the replacements.
Most of the time he would be in surgery most of the days. Like, that's what his business was. That's how he made money.
Yeah.
I made a phone call and said, hey, I need you to come and get me. I'm not safe. He came immediately. I asked the question rhetorically, but I mean it intentionally. Do you have a friend that if he was in the middle of his greatest, like, business money-making opportunity, like being in surgery, that's how he provides for his children. Yeah. That's how, like, would he leave that, or would he or she leave that and come to your aid? Like, isn't like that's a level of friendship that, like, I pray I get to be.
Yeah, I call those your darkest hour friends.
Yeah.
Who would do exactly that. They will drop everything. And just be there.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So that basically, so he took me, we had a conversation with my wife, then we sought medical treatment, right? And that was what ultimately led to kind of the discovery of, like, you're bipolar. What the heck does that mean, right? Like,
like what is that?
Don't Google it. I'll just tell you right now, because if you Google it, we are like assassins, murderers, serial killers, like the greatest, like Vincent van Gogh. They have no proof. They have no proof because obviously there was no diagnostic tools back then.
Right.
But they believe that he was some form of bipolar. Right? Because of how brilliant he was, but yet how erratic his emotions were, right? Like that cycle. So I started with a doctor. We went through the process of kind of, medication and all of that, right? I affectionately call him the drug dealer, because, again, in an effort to get me safe and managed, right?
Sure.
We started out at 500 milligrams of a particular medication. I don't know about you, but like
That's a lot.
that's a lot,
Yep.
which ultimately then muted 100% of my emotions.
Yeah.
I became a
You're
zombie.
Zombie. Yep.
Absolutely. Like there were, yeah. And then he would also only prescribe 30 days. So then you've got to come back. He didn't take any form of medical insurance. It was cash pay only, right? And so the waiting room was stuffed of people similar to me, desperately in need, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden he walks in and he goes, "Hey, so how did it go last month?" Right? And I'm like, "Oh," and you start talking. He's like, "That's great. Cool. Do you have payment?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay. Here's my card or here's my cash or whatever." He's like, "All right, here's the script. I'll see you in 30 days. All right. And I need you to go." That was like, that's not a version of therapy. That's not a
Yeah.
so you're bipolar and like all you do is like, everyone who's bipolar has their own kind of routine or regiment or kind of method in order to find themselves to be stable, right? So I'm bipolar type 1. So we have really high, like
Yeah.
crazy high, right? It's called mania. It is more addictive than heroin.
Yep.
Because once you've had it and you know what you can do with it, why would you ever want to mute that?
Right.
Right? And so that's a lot of bipolar struggle with kind of the medication regimen or the therapy regimen or the meditation regimen or the whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because, well, if I just, okay, like I'm doing good, but I'm not doing great. But if I went off medication for like a week, I could tap back into mania just a little bit. I could get my job done. I could do a better job than Rick, right? I could get promoted. I could make more money. I could buy a car. Like, and then we don't go back on medication.
Yep.
And then we cycle down, and then we either harm ourselves, we harm someone else, or we just cause utter chaos. We end up at the casino, right? And we gamble all of it away,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So in knowing kind of the process of like, I'm destined for something greater. Again, not in an ego way, but like, just like, I think we were all put here to do something. I feel like I was put here to help other people.
Yeah.
Just that simple. Not grandiose, not have thousands of subscribers or whatever. I feel like I was put here. I feel like I was given experiences so that I can be empathetic.
Right.
And that I can just maybe tap into something that somebody's struggling with. Be vulnerable. Not a lot of people talking about their worst day ever.
Right. I'm
an open book. I'm happy to talk about it because if I can talk about it and someone listening to this is struggling today, I say this and it's not intended to be funny, but for the love of Mike, please seek help today. Ask someone for help.
Yeah.
Get help. Call me, email me. Like, I don't care. Like something, right? Because there are people that depend on you. There are people in the future that need you to say something, to do something. Like I believe that God answers our prayers, but through other people.
Through other people, yeah.
I've never had him ever come down and physically be like, "Christoph, here you go." Like never, but I've had people in my life that they don't even know why they're doing or saying or acting or whatever. And I know it's like, again, inspiration from whoever you believe. I believe in God, that it's inspiration from that almighty power that is instructing them to do something for me.
Right.
You as an individual have that same connection, and there's someone waiting for you to do that.
Right.
So when I was crafting like where I'm going and what I'm doing, after I stopped speaking for Peak Potentials, they didn't survive COVID. They were a seminar company. So seminars didn't really they died. So as I kind of came to the reality of like, okay, it's my turn, right? Thinking of, okay, how do I change the narrative? How do I change, like, okay, being bipolar, I think it's awesomely terrible. Like Kanye West has an album that I'm totally spacing on exactly what it says, but it basically is like, being bipolar is like the worst thing in the world, but it's awesome. Something to that level, right? Like I'd have to look it up what it is, but it's basically that dichotomy of like, it is the best thing in the world, but it's the worst thing in the world. And so how do I help anyone, whether you have bipolar or not, right? There's a lot of mental illnesses. There's a lot of addictions. There's a lot of whatever you're struggling with, which if you're listening to this and you're breathing, you're struggling with something.
Yeah.
You might not be struggling at my level.
Right.
I think that's awesome because I don't want you at my level. It is not fun. It is not enjoyable. I would never wish this on anyone. But if you're alive and you're breathing, you're struggling with something.
Yeah.
It might be with your kids. It might be with your wife. It might be with yourself. It might be with your job, whatever. Right. So how do I change the narrative? Like being bipolar has always kind of been a negative. Mm-hmm. Okay. What saved me? A habit, a simple, almost inconsequential, right? But what it did was that habit became automatic. Ooh, an automatic habit. Like that's good, right? Okay, so habit, okay, and then you spend time, trying to brand yourself, right, on, Namecheap or Google, trying to figure out like what domain names are available. And then you're like, oh my gosh, all I have available is name like HabitFreak. Ooh, like what is that? Where does that go, right? And then it's like, yeah, that's it. Because number one, people ask, what the heck is HabitFreak? Like what is that, right? Like,
yeah, right.
I have to know, right?
Yeah.
And then
it is a catchy name.
And then it's really easy to turn people into habit freaks, right? So here's my simplest like analogy of like what a habit freak is, right? We all have what I call positive momentum habits, things that propel us forward, things that get us closer to the goals that we want. We also always, all of us all have negative momentum habits. I call these little teeny anchors, like the size of your finger that you throw out behind you that start dragging, but over years or months or decades, drag so deep that they literally then stop you from progressing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And you might not even remember what it was or where it was. I'll use a perfect example. I'm going to use you if that's okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
If you were to give me like the top 3 things that are important to you, what are they?
Family.
Okay. Family.
Health. And friends.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. Now I'm going to ask you a really bold, hard question.
Mm-hmm.
If we pulled up your calendar right now, would it show that? Where would right? Again, not try to be direct.
No, you're good.
Right?
No,
I'm
an open book.
Family, right? Like most people, when I do this, whether I'm teaching, instructing, coaching, whatever, right? Most people will say family or God, right? Friends or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll go, great, cool. Open up your phone and show me your calendar right now, and I want to see how important your family is to you on your calendar. The most important things that you do during the day?
Yeah.
Or do they get leftover time? Yeah. Meaning you schedule your business, you schedule your lunch appointments, you schedule your podcasts, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All of that is scheduled and it's in a T and you've got reminders and you've got all sorts of stuff. And then your wife or your spouse or your kids or your loved ones or whoever gets affectionately leftover time. So anything that's not scheduled, right, in the best part of the day, right, they get whatever's left. If we're sending a signal, how does that make them feel?
Right.
Where if we took 30 seconds and scheduled a date with our wife and created the same kind of like robust text message reminder, you're going to go on a date in 3 hours. If you sent that to your spouse and she got like an automated text that you're going on a date in 3 hours, your wife would be like,
I love that.
Something is wrong, right?
Yeah, I like that.
That
what's going on
habit, right? But again, are you in the habit of making those that are important feel important? Or are you in a habit of making what is important be the most important?
Right. Love that. Very eye-opening.
That's the synopsis of what it means to be a habit freak.
Gotcha.
Is to take that and go, okay, everyone, even Oprah has 24 hours a day, right? That's it. So if you make time, even if it's 15 minutes, that's it, right? Like I've got a daughter that's in college. If I don't make time on my schedule, right, to reach out to her, she's not going to text me.
Right.
I love her to death.
Yeah.
Right? Like literally, like my little turtle, there's a thing I wouldn't do for her. She's 18. She's off at college. She's living up with you. She's living her life. Like it's awesome, right? The last thing she's going to think about is texting dad.
Yeah.
Right? So I have to be very specific and proactive. Right? Would it be crazy to think like I could have tea time with an 18-year-old daughter where she, we do a FaceTime and we have two little teacups, right? And you drink whatever you want to drink. I drink only diet Chick-fil-A lemonade that's been filtered. That's it.
Yeah.
And we talk, and it might only be for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I will promise you that if you make it that important, let's make a date every Thursday where we're going to talk from 10:30 p.m. to 10:35 p.m.
Yeah.
What signal am I sending?
Yeah. You matter.
You matter.
Yep.
And I want to know what's going on.
I really want to.
And you know what? I'm willing to sacrifice my sleep. Like for me, being bipolar, sleep is one of my biggest triggers. If I do not sleep, if I do not get enough sleep, sadly, I need a minimum of 8 hours. 10 would be the best and most optimal for me and my body and everything that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. If I don't, I can start to edge towards that cycle again.
Sure.
So I have to be very self-aware of how I'm feeling, what I'm doing. That 5 minutes of tea time with my daughter is priceless.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. You've already said this already, but I want you to maybe just elaborate on it. We got a few minutes here.
Yeah.
If someone is tuning in right now, listening to you, Christoph, and they're in a dark place, and you already said some things that are great, but that one person who's listening right now and they're like struggling, what would you tell that person in this moment now?
I'd simply say, I want you to understand that I see you, that other people might not. I don't know you. I don't know where you're at, but you matter.
Love that. I love that. And you said earlier, if you need help, reach out and tell
1,000%.
someone.
Correct.
And I love that because I think a lot of times when we're in that darkness, if you will, really, if we're being honest, the last thing we really want to do is reach out to someone. It's like we're just like, that's the last thing.
I'm horrible.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at asking for help.
But we'll tell our clients here, you need that, 10, 15, 20 seconds of insane courage.
Yeah.
Just like you did when you were in your car thinking about ending your life.
Correct.
You called that friend. You actually did it. And it's saved your life. And that guy showed up for you. It was there.
He did.
So I just want to reiterate that to our listeners that I know it's hard if you're struggling and to reach out to someone, but I'm telling you, think about it. If someone reached out to you, would you be bugged they reached out to you? You'd be like, no, thanks for reaching out.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and so, I would say, I think the advantage that I had was when I reached out, I think he could tell by the tone of my voice and by the seriousness of the conversation. It was not, hey,
I know.
Dude, what you doing?
What's going on?
I got right to the point.
Right.
I need help.
Yeah.
Can you come and get me?
Yeah.
Right? Like take your friendship to that next level where if you kind of call up, like I've had a couple of people where, again, they come to my mind, right? There's just randomly like, dude, I haven't talked to that person in a long time. So I'll just randomly call or text them and they're kind of like, hey, what's up?
What's wrong?
Like, what's going on? And it's like, nothing.
Yeah.
You were on my mind. I just want you to know, like I actually did this with one of my best friend's sons.
Yeah.
He's basically the same age as my son. He came on my mind. And so I literally got his phone and I texted him. I'm like, hey, I know this is totally random, but like, can I call you later today? Like, when are you available? I just want to touch base with you. And he's like, why? That was his response.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, there's this kind of like, are you checking in on me because of my dad or
right.
whatever? I'm like, and I simply responded with, you came to my mind, and I just wanted you to know that someone out there in the universe was thinking about you.
Love that.
He responded with kind of ... Wow, that's okay. And then when we talked on the phone, right? Like he didn't even know what, like he was like,
Yeah, like,
okay.
yeah.
We got on the phone, and again, we're chatting, and all of a sudden he's like, I just like, you're probably one of the only, you know, because he kind of, he's out of the house now, he's on his own.
For sure.
Like no one from the old neighborhood has reached out.
Yeah, wow.
And and he kind of, even though he's a big man and he's peacocking and his tail's out, and he's like, he's still a little lonely sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Like he used to have like an amazing kind of like support system around him, where all of a sudden it's like he's on his own.
Yeah.
He's trying to live his life. He's doing the best that he can. And then some rando old, you know, friend, I hope that's what I'd be considered,
Sure.
reaches out. That alone, right, can be enough to like provide some level of security where he confided in me. He's like, hey dude, like, I don't know why, but like, I'm really struggling right now.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I've left my parents down. I feel like I've left myself down. I'm like, dude, like, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
He's like, honestly, just call me again.
Yeah.
Like that's enough, right?
Beautiful.
So like, you never know, back to your question, you never know where, if you have the courage, like you said, that like 10-second burst of courage to fire off a text or a phone call and simply just say, hey, I'm not doing great. I guarantee you, if it's not the first person, one in your top 5 will be there for you.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And what it will do is it will filter who should now be. You might want to move that one person you called first. Maybe move them down. I'm a big fan of trying to remove anybody who's not like 100% on my team, kind of lower on the totem pole per se.
Right.
Because when we all have those dark moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, trust me, I have dark moments every day.
Yeah.
Like living and being bipolar, like it is a constant daily struggle.
Yeah.
It is not something where like, cool, I took my medication, I did my meditation, or I took my medication and took my meditation and I did my float tank. I'm all good for the next month.
Right.
No. This is something I get to like
For sure.
lovingly challenge every day. And so therefore I need a support group who understands and knows that if I ever use the words, I'm not feeling safe, they drop. Like they will, you know what I mean? Like I can kind of give them like the secret code word, if you would.
Yeah.
And they know to rush in and be like, okay, what do we need to do? Where are you? How can I help? Like, what's going on? What are you thinking? You know, do you need medication from home?
Yeah.
Right? Like I have kind of, we call it DEFCON 3, where if I need it, I can take it.
Yeah.
But then having that support system, build that around yourself.
I love it. Very well said.
I don't know about well said, but
no,
but
it was.
It's been a long time of like putting that around myself.
Yeah.
To where, again, back to habits, right? We all have habits that move us forward.
Mm-hmm.
We all have habits that slow us down. I think as adults in the what is this 21st century? Like what? I don't know what century we're. Whatever, right? Like in 2025, I think vulnerability is the new strength.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Like we went through a period of time where like, no. Like I'm great. I'm doing awesome. Like only post amazing pictures. Right. But it's like, you know what? Like I am struggling with like, I don't know how to handle my daughter, or I don't know how to handle this thing at work. It takes friendship to a completely different level.
Yeah.
Right. Where like we have associates or acquaintances, and then we have true friends.
Yeah.
If you can't share that with a true friend and have them be empathetic, they don't deserve the right to call themselves friends.
Sure.
Right? Like
Totally
that habit, because if they're not wanting to make you better, if they're not wanting you to feel important, then you've got to surround yourself with that right circle, because then that's what ultimately creates that opportunity for you to get better, for you to get help, for you to do the things that you need to do. Right? Like I know for me, I look at my daughters, they're growing up in a world that is brutal on girls.
Yeah.
Like I have to do everything that I can in my parental power, right?
Yeah.
To make them like confident, amazing, self-sufficient, and then try not to kill them while I'm raising that type of a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's amazing,
Right.
but boy, it's a handful. Like, woo.
Yeah.
But isn't that what we want for ourselves?
Yeah.
Is to be confident, capable, and like self-sufficient? But that requires
Absolutely.
us to do all the little teeny things, right? Make a date for our wife, make an appointment with our daughter, like, take care of your health, right? Like, again, if you never went to the gym, how healthy would your body be?
Right.
Not healthy.
Yeah.
You can eat great, but there's a physical, you know what I mean? There's the
Yeah.
consumption side, but there's the physical side.
Yep.
Where if you're not doing both, right?
Yep.
It's like a catch-22.
Yeah. Oh, totally makes sense, and I love your approach on that. If someone wants to know more about what you do and get more involved with what you're doing,
Yeah.
and reach out to you, even ask you a question, what's the best way for someone to do that?
All of my socials are CHRISTOPH Merrill. You can find me online. You can go to the website. You can also go to HabitFreak.com.
Yep.
Probably the easiest way, whether that's for the newsletter or, whatever it is that you're looking for, you're more than welcome to go there.
Okay. I love that. And I'll put those links in the show notes.
That'd be
So
awesome.
it'll be quick for someone
Perfect.
to hurry and get right there. But yeah, dude, I love your passion. I really do. I love your energy.
Yeah.
You talk about frequencies and stuff, man. I
Yeah.
have felt it today from you. Our listeners, I'm sure, are feeling it as well.
I hope so.
This was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Yeah.
And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and all the good you're trying to do in this world. It means a lot.
Same, Tom.
Yeah.
Same, Todd. I really
Tom,
appreciate
Todd, it's
No,
all
no,
good.
no.
You can call me Frank.
I don't want to call you Frank. Todd, again, back to the original statement. You're important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
so are you.
Yeah.
And so is everyone listening to this.
Amen.
And there you go, folks. I told you today was going to be a doozy, and it was. So blessed to have CHRISTOPH Merrill here. Please reach out to him. Just click those links on the show notes. You can get right to him. And again, thanks for tuning in. Please share this with your loved ones. If you have a family or a family friend or a family, anyone in your family, a son or a daughter who's struggling. I'm struggling just saying that. But get them a link to this episode. It'll really open their eyes on so many levels. And like I said, if you have a question for me or for CHRISTOPH, please reach out. We're here for you. We love you. And just like CHRISTOPH said so beautifully, you matter. Till next time, everyone. Take care.